The first light of dawn streamed gently through the thin fabric curtain, rousing Eamon Thorne before he could finish his dream. The stillness of Windridge village was broken only by the rustle of wind through the reeds by the stream and the hen's call to her chicks. He rose quietly from his bed, bowed his head at his father's grave, then stepped into the small, packed earth kitchen where his grandmother was ladling thick porridge into a bowl for his breakfast. His grandmother was well into her 70s, her back bent like a dry log, her eyes dim yet her heart still warm as embers. Each day she stirred corn porridge and cooked oatmeal milk over her rickety wood stove. Every spoonful she fed him was a silent sacrifice in their life of scarcity. Eamon dared not complain, offering only a gentle smile to reassure her. After the hurried breakfast, Eamon slung a canvas bag over his shoulder, tucked a coil of rope inside, and gripped the handle of a polished dagger. He slipped between the terraced rice paddies, where neighboring children were already in the fields, the dew still clinging to the stalks, and climbed halfway up the mountain to forage for wild mushrooms. These orphaned clusters of all kinds were shunned by city folk. Some of what he gathered would be sun-dried by his grandmother and sold wholesale to traders, enough to buy a little flour for tomorrow. His woven basket of mushrooms pressed firmly against his back as he descended. Before turning onto the path home, he paused at a patch of wild roses, quietly admiring their slender petals thrusting through cracks in the stone. In the morning light, those rose blossoms looked like fragile rays of hope amid hardship, igniting Eamon's desire to rise above his circumstances. Back home, he hurried off to tend cattle for a wealthy villager. The wooden bells around the cows' necks clacked rhythmically along the dirt road, mingling with the earthy scent of the countryside. Eamon calculated the distance and time needed to run to the distant hill where the herd grazed. Though the work was arduous, it earned him a few coins, enough to buy tonic for his grandmother. At midday, in their humble thatched house, the two of them ate cold rice and a few slices of cassava. His grandmother hastily wiped away tears, pitying him, while Eamon quietly praised the cassava as delicious to lift her spirits. Afterwards, he carried buckets of well water to bathe her, gently wiping each wrinkle on her skin with the woolen towel his mother had lovingly woven before she passed away. In the afternoon, Eamon spent half an hour at the village school, where Miss Marisol taught reading and writing. He listened intently to every lesson, silently noting new words in his tattered notebook. Knowledge was his burning passion, for he knew only education could open the door to changing his fate. Although the classroom walls were strewn with random landscape paintings, his gaze was fixed on images of distant lands, painted dreams that beckoned him onward. As dusk fell, Eamon strolled home, the last golden rays illuminating the thatched roofs and the leaf-strewn path. A wistful question rose in his heart: might he one day leave Windridge, carrying his love and his talent, no longer dependent on mushrooms or hired cattle? Smiling at the thought, he stretched and welcomed the cool evening breeze, ready for whatever opportunities lay ahead. A cool morning breeze drifted through the carriage window as Evangeline Harper and her parents turned off the noisy paved road onto the leaf-carpeted trail into the Windridge Valley. Her heart fluttered at the sight of the rural landscape, the pale straw-thatched houses, cows leisurely grazing by the stream, and the eager faces of country children playing in the rice fields. A light silk scarf draped across her shoulders fluttered in the gentle sunlight, while her hands held a sketchbook, poised to capture every simple moment. Her parents, artists from a distant city, had come to paint portraits of impoverished children, but Evangeline carried a deeper aspiration: to discover a beauty more authentic than any painting, their sincerity, kindness, and unyielding hope. When they stopped before Eamon's grandmother's humble cottage, Evangeline's gaze lingered on the narrow window frame, where clear, innocent eyes and shy smiles of disabled children peered out, waiting for her pencil. She stepped lightly into the yard, listening to the soft crunch of her footsteps on the sandy ground, greeted the grandmother with a gentle smile, then seated herself on the doorstep. Opening her sketchbook, her fingers flew over the pages, outlining the children's faces. Each line and play of light and shadow was not merely an outer likeness but an attempt to touch their souls, so that each portrait could tell the story of the person beneath it. In that moment, Evangeline knew this journey was not merely an act of charity, but the beginning of another story, a tale of heart, resilience, and dreams that transcend every barrier. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, tracing two small sores on the child's cheekbones that glimmered with a spark of hope as Evangeline gently tilted her head, concentrating on sketching those clear eyes. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the corner of the yard, a tall, slender village boy, stepping slowly with a basket of water and a damp cloth draped over his shoulder. His eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected guest, the artist with her sketchbook, hastily braided hair, and curious gaze. Eamon Thorne paused, bowed to his grandmother, then quietly fetched a rickety wooden chair for her. No words were needed. That simple gesture revealed the warm hospitality and sincerity of the people here. When she gave a slight nod of thanks, Eamon bent down to retie the rope tethering the cow in the front yard and spoke in a warm voice, "Would you like some ice for your water bottle?" Evangeline looked up, a smile lighting her face. "Thank you, that would be wonderful." He hurried off, leaving behind the clip-clop of hooves and the soft laughter of the village children. In that moment, Evangeline inhaled the scent of dry wood from the old doorframe, the pungent aroma of cooking smoke, and an indescribable warmth welling up in her heart. That afternoon, Evangeline set down her pen when she saw Eamon gathered with a group of children by the stream. He bent to scoop cool water, dipped a clean cloth, and gently wiped the sweat from their brows. The simplicity of the scene made her pause her sketching entirely, spending several minutes observing every movement, his patience, his steady hands, and his kind eyes. She felt compelled to capture not only his likeness but also the essence of his heart in her work, a beautiful focal point against the humble countryside backdrop. Later, when a sudden rain tapped on the thatched roof, Evangeline slipped onto the porch and opened her watercolor box. On the damp walls she freely painted the drifting shapes of mountain clouds and forest earth, then lightly touched the painting with flecks of shimmering light, a burst of freedom drawn from distant realms. Eamon peeked through the door crack, his gaze following each brushstroke, then quietly withdrew when he saw her smile, "See you tomorrow." In his mind lingered the thought that she was unlike any city dweller he had ever met. She seemed to choose to stay in order to understand and share, not merely to pass through. When night fell, Evangeline wrapped her paintings in coarse cloth and approached the warm hearth, finding his grandmother resting with her eyes closed. She bowed her head in greeting and whispered her thanks for the miracle of this encounter. All the clamor of the city and the splendor of gallery frames could not compare to a peaceful day spent watching Eamon care for the homeland's seedlings. In her drifting dreams, she saw two hands clasped together and heard the soft whisper of her heart. This was only the beginning of their journey. Morning mist still clung to every blade of grass as Evangeline tightened her grip on the coarse canvas backpack, deciding to follow the narrow trail up into the remote mountains where she believed she could find a uniquely inspiring scene for her charity paintings. The pale dawn at last parted the leaves' shadows, casting a few glittering dewdrops across the bare tree trunks. She moved slowly, placing each careful step on the dry, rustling leaves, her eyes tracking the crumbling earth ridges and moss-covered stones, sketching in her mind the image of the untamed forest. But when she reached a small cliff, curiosity drove her to step closer to the edge, seeking the widest view down into the valley. She slipped, felt a sharp chill run along her spine as she lost her balance, and tumbled onto the jagged ground. Moments later, Evangeline could only hold her breath as pain radiated from her right ankle up to her knee, the wound bleeding freely through her pant leg. She tried to sit up, but her leg would not lift, agony forcing her to bow her face into the leaves. In that panicked instant, the sunlight drifting through the canopy dimmed under the shadow of someone else. Eamon Thorne had followed her tracks up the mountain and, seeing her motionless form, hurried to her side. He knelt beside her, gently calling a name she had never spoken aloud, then carefully unwrapped the silk scarf's edge, used clear spring water to cleanse the wound, and fashioned two small branches into makeshift splints. Cradling Evangeline on his shoulder, he carried her step by step down the mountain, his hand gripping hers as if to say, "You'll be all right." With each determined stride through the dense woods, Evangeline felt a profound gratitude and a warmth she couldn't quite describe. At that moment, She realized she had found not only inspiration for her paintings but also someone who would help her paint the story of her own life. In the days that followed, as the swelling around her wound began to ease, Evangeline was laid on an old wooden bed in the corner of her grandmother's little painting room, surrounded by pots of lush green plants and the faint scent of herbal remedies. Each morning, Eamon quietly brought her a warm jar of water infused with chrysanthemum petals, as his grandmother had instructed. He would sit beside her, gently clean the wound, and apply a natural herbal salve, while Evangeline offered him a grateful smile with eyes full of thanks. She used the enforced stillness to discuss her sketches with Eamon, asking him about the mountain herbs and listening to his childhood stories of herding cattle and foraging mushrooms. When the sunset light slanted through the small window and illuminated her fair skin, Eamon could not help but steal glances, feeling his heart skip a beat. Village children still came by from time to time, shyly offering stolen sweet potatoes or gourds for the painter sister, which made Evangeline laugh with delight, while Eamon faithfully wiped her hands or adjusted the rag covering her torn pant leg. Under that simple thatched roof, two distant souls grew closer through each shared story and every appreciative smile, and Evangeline realized her feelings for Eamon had become more than gratitude, they had become a longing to protect and share their most hidden hopes. One early morning, with dew still clinging to the young grass, Evangeline awoke to find her leg almost fully healed. She propped herself on the bed and looked through the window to see Eamon milking the cow for his grandmother. The pale dawn light caught the dew in his hair, stirring something tender in her chest. Quietly, she lifted her pen and sketched his image on the paper, striving to capture that simple yet deeply warm moment. When their eyes met, she held up her drawing. Eamon smiled, nodded, and blushed as he bent back to his task. The hush of the room, broken only by birdsong outside, felt like a language shared only by the two of them. That day, Evangeline decided to tidy the painting corner by the wall and invited Eamon to sit with her, sketching outlines of the mountain herbs to inspire her charity series. She admired the way he carefully snapped each leaf and picked out small twigs to craft simple frames. With every page turn and brushstroke, Evangeline sensed her heart belonged more and more to this country boy. Yet at night, when the hearth's fire dwindled, Eamon slipped outside and gazed at the star-filled sky, unable to draw his own dreams for the future. He feared his poverty would become a burden to her, and that one day Evangeline might grow weary and return to her magnificent city life, leaving him behind in this anxious world. Self-doubt shadowed him, causing him to avoid her gaze and hide his swelling affection. But Evangeline would not let go. She persisted in sharing her heart through little drawings, the reed garden, a portrait of Eamon and his grandmother, the scene of her fall and his rescue. Each morning she sent him a new sketch inscribed with "Thank you for saving me" or "Please let me stay by your side." At first Eamon fell silent, but when he read those gentle words, he felt a warm trust blossom, enough to dispel his anxieties. Then on one golden afternoon, when his grandmother had fully recovered and sat serenely weaving a bamboo hat, Evangeline took Eamon by the hand and led him out to the valley where the cows grazed. She told him she would never leave, that she believed in the future they could build together despite wind, rain, or any trial. For the first time, Eamon looked directly into her eyes and saw a world of hope there. His self-doubt melted away, replaced by quiet resolve. He smiled, slipped his arms around Evangeline, and whispered, "I want to paint the next chapters with you." Beneath the brilliant sunset, their hearts beat as one, ready to embark on the journey ahead. In the days that followed, the sunlight still warmed the thatched roof, but it could not warm Eamon's heart when his grandmother suddenly collapsed in the small field. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, her face as pale as the last leaf of autumn. Eamon hurriedly carried her home, eyes brimming with tears, calling through the village for medicine. Seeing this, Evangeline emptied her entire savings for the charity project into the hands of the local healer to secure a full course of precious remedies. Each morning she accompanied Eamon to the ancient pine's roots to gather young needles. On other days she braved the rocky stream to fetch clear spring water to brew with the medicines. By the crackling hearth, she and Eamon painstakingly prepared doses, feeding his grandmother each warming sip and whispering encouragement for her to grow stronger. In that cramped room, filled only with the rustle of herbs and his grandmother's faint breaths, it was their sincere devotion that soothed the ache in Eamon's spirit, showing him that true love means sharing every burden with the one you cherish. One rainy afternoon, his grandmother finally opened her eyes and smiled serenely, beckoning Evangeline and Eamon to her side. With a trembling hand she brushed back Evangeline's hair and rasped, "You are my blessing, thank you both for not abandoning me." Eamon gripped his grandmother's hand, his eyes bright with joy. Evangeline quietly wiped away tears, deeply understanding the power of unity and compassion. From that moment, the host and guest bond between her and Eamon vanished, replaced by the warmth and trust of family. As evening fell, Evangeline and Eamon sat by the stream planning a free art class for the village children. She shared her vision eagerly. "We'll teach them to paint nature, so they recognize the beauty around them and believe in their future." Eamon nodded enthusiastically, resolved to restore his grandmother's health and sow the seeds of art in these young hearts. With the stream's melody at their backs and the first stars twinkling above, they glimpsed the next chapter of their journey, where love and dreams would blossom together. On the day the free painting class began, the clear sunlight dyed the old thatched roof golden, and Evangeline and Eamon spread 2 cloths on the ground to serve as their classroom in the front yard, with dozens of eager children seated around the rickety wooden table. Evangeline picked up a large brush and painted an outline of the mountain horizon, while Eamon carefully demonstrated each basic stroke on paper. Whenever a small hand laboriously shot up, he would patiently sit beside the child and gently adjust their wrist angle. Laughter and discussions about colors mingled with the scent of chrysanthemum tea that his grandmother had brewed, filling the courtyard with an unusual warmth. The first lesson ended as the sun began to lean westward. The children rushed forward to offer a pair of sweet potatoes fashioned into earrings and freshly picked water spinach as thanks, simple, heartfelt tokens of their affection. Evangeline clasped Eamon's hand, her eyes misted with happiness, and Eamon whispered that he had never seen joy spread so intensely. Amid the children's cheers, their hearts beat as one, convinced that they were not only painting on paper but also painting new hope for Windridge. The next morning, while the early dew still clung to the grass, Eamon and Evangeline walked slowly to the small bus stop at the edge of the village. His grandmother, Miss Marisol, and several children stood waiting at a distance, quietly waving farewell. Eamon's heart ached as he saw the canvas bag filled with his paintings and the bundle of medicine for his grandmother neatly prepared. Evangeline squeezed his hand, her eyes full of trust as if transferring all her warmth into him. The whistle signaled it was time to board, and they caught only one last glimpse of Windridge's shabby thatched roofs fading away through the window bars, carrying with them countless warm memories and hopes for the road ahead. The journey to the city ran past rolling hills and then suddenly opened onto wide concrete roads lined with towering skyscrapers. It was Eamon's first sight of the hurried crowds clad in suits and the endless stream of cars honking their horns. He watched silently through the glass, feeling both astonished and excited. Evangeline chattered non-stop about every detail: the illuminated signs, the sidewalk cafes, the rows of oil paint galleries lining the streets. Everything was worlds apart from the peaceful countryside, leaving Eamon both in awe and worried whether he could keep pace with this new life. On his first day at the Aurelia Academy of Fine Arts, Eamon felt overwhelmed by the spacious campus piled high with easels and vibrant exhibition paintings. In the classroom, the professor's lecture on color blending techniques and reflective lighting left him dazed. His classmates arrived with extensive portfolios and meticulously crafted works. Eamon hid his small sketchbook of Windridge scenes in his pocket, wondering if rural landscapes could make an impression here. During the first practical session, his hand trembled as he held a brush and produced a few crude strokes that earned him a few sideways glances. He dared not look up, self-doubt rising in his chest. That evening, back in the cozy room Evangeline had rented, she sat with him, poured almond milk, and retrieved his Windridge sketchbook from her bag. "You have something no one else does," she said gently, holding up the drawing he had made on his first day, a sketch capturing the sunset over terraced fields. "Don't forget the value of simplicity," she encouraged. Eamon looked at the page, his eyes shining with resolve to learn these new techniques and bring the spirit of his homeland to life on his urban canvases. Day after day, Eamon rose before dawn to study his professor's paintings, join group critiques, and then head to the library each afternoon to research technical methods. Evangeline was always by his side, scavenging scrap wood to build experimental frames or bringing pastries and paint sets to keep his energy up. His diligence and passion not only honed his skills but also won the admiration of his peers and instructors. Under the warm glow of the evening lights, he smiled more confidently than ever, eyeing the large canvas forming on his easel, a painting depicting the journey of two hearts from Windridge to the city, opening a new chapter filled with hope. In the midday light, Eamon completed his final piece for the Academy's internal exhibition, a radiant Windridge sunset with Evangeline and his grandmother standing amid swaying silvergrass. When Professor Aurelia made her rounds, she lingered longest before Eamon's work. Gently taking his brush, she asked, "How did you use reflective lighting to capture the countryside atmosphere so vividly?" Eamon smiled shyly and explained how he had leveraged the shadow of the thatched cottage and the streaks of light filtering through the leaves. At the end of the session, the professor praised him and awarded him an honorary scholarship, granting full sponsorship for the next term and a group exhibition with top students, moment when Eamon realized that unwavering effort had been recognized. On the day of the official exhibition, the gallery was packed with collectors, art journalists, and faculty from across the continent. When Eamon's Windridge sunset hung beside Evangeline's work, every eye was drawn to his pink clouds and swaying silvergrass. One critic noted in a notebook, "It's rare to see someone bring the breath of the countryside into contemporary art with such sensitivity." Applause erupted as Eamon stepped onto the stage to receive his award, and Evangeline beamed with pride, her eyes shining with shared joy. With his prize money and honorarium, Eamon kept his promise to his grandmother and childhood friends. He established the Windridge Future Fund to build a new school, repair the mountain trail, and supply books and materials for the children. Whenever he had time, Eamon and Evangeline returned to Windridge to sell paintings for charity or offer advanced art lessons to the village teachers. The sound of hammers and drills building the new school, mingled with children's laughter across the hamlet, was the greatest reward for the boy who had lost his parents so young. Finally, in their city room, Eamon and Evangeline gazed at a photograph of themselves at the new school's dedication ceremony. Their eyes held not only love but also pride at having turned a poor boy's dream into reality and spreading hope to others. A contented sigh escaped as Eamon gently took Evangeline's hand and whispered, "We did it." Outside the window, the city lights gleamed like a reminder that, no matter where they are, love and determination will always light the way. The years that followed carried the city's pulse onward, and Eamon and Evangeline gradually turned their little rented room into a vibrant art studio. Easels and vividly painted canvases nestled among reclaimed wood and scrap they'd collected from every corner. Every morning, sunlight streamed through the tall glass window, illuminating boards waiting for fresh brushstrokes. Evangeline lost herself sketching clients' portraits while Eamon poured the breath of Windridge into every swath of color. Patrons came not only to purchase paintings but to hear their stories of the Silvergrass Fields, and of Eamon's frail grandmother still faithfully weaving hats each time they returned home. Their Art for Tomorrow project began to spread, drawing young artists to participate in a charity exhibition at the city's Central Park. On opening night, Evangeline stood on the windy stage, her voice warm as she recalled the eager eyes of the Windridge children. Eamon clasped her hand, suddenly aware of art's immense power to transform lives. Proceeds from the sale of paintings would continue to fund a community kitchen, a lending library, and expanded art classes for other remote villages. Alongside their charity work, Eamon decided to advance his skills further by enrolling in a master's program in visual communications at a prestigious university. The full scholarship from Windridge Future not only covered his tuition but arranged internships at leading animation and design studios worldwide. On every business trip, Evangeline stood by his side. They visited museums, met experts, and brought fresh ideas back to fuel their community projects. One autumn afternoon, when the leaves had turned a mellow gold, Eamon returned to Windridge not only with paintings but also with a tablet, a mini printer, and a set of digital art tools. He and Evangeline installed a multimedia classroom in his grandmother's old cottage, teaching children to use technology to preserve their village memories. The click of keyboards under the rustic roof built a bridge between tradition and modernity. Finally, on the 10th anniversary gala for the Windridge Future Fund, Eamon and Evangeline stood hand in hand on stage beneath shimmering lights, looking out over the happy faces of villagers, students, and fellow artists. They had become more than friends from two different worlds. They had become symbols of hope, love's power, and the spirit of sharing. The night wound down to violin melodies and laughter, affirming that every painting they'd created did more than add color, it painted brighter futures for countless lives. At dawn's fresh light the next morning, Eamon and Evangeline walked slowly through the carved wooden gate reading Heirloom Art Library, which they had inaugurated just the night before. Inside hung treasured paintings from their homeland, artworks by the children they'd mentored, and a dedicated corner honoring his ancestors, featuring a photograph of his grandmother alongside the battered sketchbook that Evangeline first used to help Eamon draw. They had nurtured this dream for years. Now, the space served as both a public gallery and a library, where anyone could come for inspiration, learning, and to share their own story. As visitors began to flood in, Eamon gently squeezed Evangeline's hand, their eyes scanning each brushstroke while echoes of the opening day drumbeats and villagers' thanks rang in their ears. They knew their journey was no longer just theirs alone but belonged to all the kindred hearts ready to join in creating beauty for their community. That afternoon, under a gentle sky, they returned to Windridge to celebrate his grandmother's 90th birthday. The old cottage had been beautifully refurbished, warm beige walls, clear glass windows, and a cozy nook housing the library's new books, gifts from the Heirloom Art Library. His grandmother sat in a rocking chair among blooming flowers, her silver hair fragrant with lavender. When Evangeline gently helped her to her feet and Eamon handed her a freshly printed framed photo, tears of pride glistened in her eyes. "You have made me so proud." In that moment, all their past toil and tears transformed into shared belief and love. Time flowed on. Eamon and Evangeline held a simple wedding among the Silvergrass Fields where they first shared their dreams. Friends, students, Windridge neighbors, and Professor Aurelia came to celebrate, creating a warm scene under twinkling lights. As Evangeline stepped to the altar, Eamon remembered the girl who once lay injured on the mountain, and now they vowed beside the stream where she had been rescued. In the years that followed, their little family welcomed a new member, a baby girl named Fleur, her bright face echoing the wildflowers of the fields. Eamon placed her small hand on his old sketchbook and told her the story of Windridge, of her great-grandmother, and of the dream to paint a better world. Evangeline leaned into her husband, smiling gently, "You will bring color to everyone's life." And so, beneath the porch hung with paintings from every continent, the three generations continued writing new chapters: online art classes for remote children, charity exhibitions across the continents, and the Heirloom Art Library ever open to anyone with a dream. They understood that their greatest treasure was not fame or fortune but the ability to inspire and share love, so that everyone who passed through those gallery doors could see themselves and choose a hopeful new beginning.